All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Independent Voter Podcast. I'm joined here again with Cara McCormick. We are not joined today with Sean, who's a little bit under the weather. And in the background, you'll hear the soothing voice of Ethan, who is also our viral social media.
I'm here again. I'm back.
All right. Well, I was up in Sacramento. My most exciting meeting had nothing to do with politics. As some of you know, we're getting ready to relaunch Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, organic intelligence. So that's quite fun. We had some very good meetings up there. What have you been up to, Cara? You've been in the snowstorm. We're sitting here on the West Coast all warm.
I am snowed in pretty much. There's more than a foot of snow. And I think I've had like several nervous breakdowns over it, asking my husband to please like figure out how he can get us out of here because it's too much day
I have a
after
guest
day.
room. I have a guest room.
I mean, we have 2 dogs.
It requires babysitting, though. If you stay in my guest room, you have to babysit a 3 and a 4-year-old.
That's sort of part of the thing about wanting to leave the house because it's an empty nest now. And I want to be empty of it too. It's like this big house. It's really cold and I miss my kids. Tiger's a freshman at BC and Jack's a sophomore at Columbia. And I miss them so much.
Jack actually, he messaged me about, he said it's the return of the Cousin Bowl because the Patriots and the Seahawks are going to the Super Bowl. So, we've been bantering back and forth over Instagram. So you let him know, Seahawks, we're taking it all the way.
Yeah. Anyway, so much happening in politics too, and so much happening in our world to talk about. And one of the things I really wanted to ask you about, Chad, since you're a lawyer and I'm not, is I posted just the text of the Fourth Amendment on the IVN Facebook page. And I'm just wondering, does the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, does it apply to everyone as long as they're like on U.S. soil, or is it just for U.S. citizens? I'm pretty sure it applies to everyone, but there's thousands of comments back and forth in the comments on Facebook of people sort of asking this question. So,
right. Well, I don't want to load it. I'm an attorney. I also have my perspective. Like, this is an issue that's got to be battled out in court. But I think if I were to say where I was going to end up, it's how can you apply it only to citizens, right? Because then, okay, they can just go into your house and break down your door and go, oh, I thought you weren't a citizen, right? It's one of those issues that, like, I don't know why this has been as much of a discussion, I guess, because, ICE has gone in and we don't need a warrant. We just need all this kind of stuff. But the point is, like, yeah, if you don't have it for everybody that's residing here, you don't have it at all. Right. So that's my position. So I don't know. I might get criticized by some of our folks who have different perspectives. But I think if you take that to logical extreme, you give any agency the authority to go in and say, well, as long as you say that you're targeting somebody that's not a citizen, then you can break all of the the Bill of Rights. Seems to me like then you lose the Bill of Rights altogether.
well, it's like they're saying that they don't need warrants to go into people's houses or cars to take them, that they don't need warrants for this, that ICE just has to sign something that says, we give ourselves sort of provisional ability to be able to do this.
Right. That's my point. If they're saying the justification for basically going around the Bill of Rights is that they believe that there's illegal folks that are illegally in the country, I'm saying if you say that's the basis and you give them the authority on that basis, you don't have it at all, because what you've said is that the Fourth Amendment doesn't always apply as long as there's that basis. So if they say, oh, we thought Ethan or Cara was here illegally, that's why we broke down his door and just came in there without any warning, nobody has it, because then you have a bureaucrat, right? Forget whether you support or you're against ICE or whatever. At the end of the day, they're administrative and there's a bureaucracy and all that stuff. You're giving those folks the authority to decide when they think, right? Instead of a judge, you're giving them the authority to decide, oh, well, there's probably illegal activity here. And then what happens if you have 5 illegal folks? Maybe they're really bad people, but then you have one person that's not, right? Does it apply there? So, I mean, I think going around our warrant system and the Fourth Amendment that applies to the rest of the system sets an extraordinarily dangerous precedent for whatever side of the aisle you are on.
Yeah, yeah. And so we posted on Facebook last week before Alex Preddy was killed in Minneapolis. We posted and sort of post the Renee Good killing in Minneapolis. We posted a thing that says, like, has ICE gone too far? Thousands and thousands of people weighing in before the recent shooting that happened on Saturday, this last Saturday morning. People, the majority, according to AI, the majority of the thousands of comments were
Well, I
saying
don't.
that ICE hadn't gone too far. And I wonder if that's changed
Yeah, well, I
now.
mean, Ethan, read what the AI.
The,
Do you have the AI
yeah,
summary available?
there's
So, I mean,
actually
one of the benefits of AI, right, is you
eh,
can just ask Facebook, "Hey, summarize the comments to
well,
the post."
they just put it on there automatically. They don't even ask if
So,
you want to see it. But I would say, reminder, this was before the Alex Preddy, the second person died. But when we ask this question, the meta AI summary is most commenters believe ICE hasn't gone too far, with many referencing the song Ice Ice Baby to express support. So I think that kind of shows, a lot about where we are in terms of the response online, how comfortable people feel saying things that, I don't know, 20 years ago, would you hear any major political figure saying Ice Ice Baby after there was a law enforcement killing? Is
right.
that
Yeah,
is
and
that something
I
that
don't.
would be
I mean, I don't think that, I think both sides, thankfully, Waltz and Trump actually seem to have had a positive conversation. Both sides are certainly responsible for elevating the temperature and feeding the base. Obviously, we know comments tend to come from those who have more enthusiasm and more opinionated, I should
yes.
say, right? But even though when we do polls, like we show, our audience is very, very diverse, right? Is basically we got like a third of folks lean to the more right, a third of folks lean more left, and a third are like really solidly in the middle. But what you see is like the temperature got raised so high on both sides because something really bad happens, and then from the president to the governor, they're like, it's Ice Ice Baby to abolish ICE, right? It's like, didn't we already see this play out in the defund the police stuff, right? People, you can believe that ICE has gone too far without also believing that we need to abolish ICE, right? And so it's the same with the police stuff. We can
No,
believe, right?
absolutely. And I think I've seen a lot of, it's not necessarily every video that's about the topic, but a lot of comment sections are coming to the consensus that two things can be true at once, which is that these shootings absolutely unjustified, the wrong way to go about it, but also that there is still a need for enforcement, and that the majority of Americans, they want these laws, these immigration laws, enforced in a way that, makes it fair for everyone in the country.
Well, I mean, maybe that's a good segue into our issue going on in Oklahoma where they're trying to reform. I mean, we talk about this all the time. Like, so then why do we get in this place where, one elected official shouting abolish the police and the other one saying, let ICE do whatever they want, and frankly, they don't even need to listen to the Fourth Amendment. Like, how do we get to that place? And how does that relate to Oklahoma, Kara?
Well, Oklahoma, under Oklahoma's current system, the recognized political parties are allowed to decide whether or not to let independent voters participate in their primaries or not. And in 2026, the Republicans, the Democrats, and the Libertarian Party, they all chose to bar independents from participating in their primary elections in Oklahoma. So the state of play there is that there's 500,000 independents that are locked out, and the people decided to do something about it after my heart. They started gathering signatures for a citizens initiative. And while much of us were, buried in snow this past week, the good folks in Oklahoma turned in, let's see, more than 200,000 petition signatures to end the use of taxpayer-funded closed primaries in the state of Oklahoma. They needed 172,993, and so they got, looks like, more than 25,000 as a cushion. And, you know,
I mean, that's really incredible, and we know I don't know if some of you've followed really close, they had some issues where there's funders that, backed out, and then, then the groups there on the ground, they said, "No, we're going anyway, we're gonna get on the ground." I mean, I don't know all the folks on the ground there, I do know, like, Andy Moore, who's the, executive director of the National Association of Nonpartisan Formers, happens to also live in Oklahoma, so I know he's had some hand in pushing that, but you gotta give a shout out to them. I mean, this is tough, and then, we'll see if they can pass it at the ballot when the forces of both parties come down and then they, have their own narrative about why this is right. It's funny because the Republican Party strategy will be this is a Democratic Party coup, and then the Democrats will tell their voters that this is a Republican Party, and like they both do this, they do the same thing, right? And the irony is, you also have the libertarian parties and stuff that this is all about political parties where we go back as independent voter. Do our elections serve parties or do our elections serve voters, right? I imagine like 95% of the electorate would say our elections are for voters, but our entire process is designed around serving the political parties.
And, there's definitely some other people besides Andy Moore. There's a woman called Margaret Kobos, who's the founder and CEO of something called Oklahoma United. That's the nonprofit that helped to launch the initiative. And then there was a quote in Sean's article this weekend from a guy called Ken Setter, who's a retired Tulsa pediatrician and a longtime supporter of the initiative. He said, "Fix how we choose our leaders, and we can start fixing everything else." And this guy's just, that's it.
Right. I mean, that's right at the core. I mean, that's where Independent Voter Project has always been, is like we get in ideological fights. I mean, we talk about this issue, and because we have different perspectives, divide us, right? At the end of the day, like we're for realigning the incentives, that the incentives for a representative should be to listen to all those perspectives and with their good judgment make a decision. Right now, the incentives are, oh, our elected leader should go pick up a sign and stand out there with the protesters, which to me seems
Well,
ridiculous, but that's
I'll
where
tell
we're
you
at.
what, exactly what you guys are saying right now, that is what's resonating with our audience on social media. Jesse Ventura, the clips that we've posted of him saying essentially what you're saying, the country is put third to the two parties, which
Right.
are the Democrats and the Republicans. And whatever we need to do to kind of, do we need to make them political action committees instead of parties? How do we just get rid of this duopoly of power that, like he says, they've been in control for 150 years, and here we are. Most people are probably dissatisfied with the state of the country. So what has led to that?
So
It's this two-party system,
you
right?
guys are probably, I know you guys have heard this, but like this is what people need to understand. Okay, both parties have gone to their conventions and had all their people holding signs that say "country over party." Okay, well, Independent Voter Project has sat there in the courtroom and argued against both parties. And where the state of the law is today, when Independent Voter Project said every voter, regardless of party, should have access to the integral stage of the election, including primary, both parties unified, said back, and the court agreed because they appoint the judges, just join a party. Your right to vote is contingent on just joining a party. That's the state of the law today. Both parties agree with that. They disagree a lot of stuff outside the courtroom. Go into the courtroom, they're best friends.
It's in both of their best interests, right? Maintain the control, maintain the power.
But in
They
Oklahoma, we got some
There you
citizen
go.
democracy going on, baby. You're doing
Yeah.
fine, Oklahoma. Oklahoma, okay. Keep going. Keep
Shout out
doing
to
it.
Oklahoma.
Shout out. Shout out. And just to continue on with our little podcast here, I want to talk about how the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, is now warning Colbert, The View, Jimmy Kimmel, all these different sort of late night and daytime shows that also discuss the news. They're saying, okay, you've got to include both sides. And they're saying, basically it's Brendan Carr. This is Trump's appointee on the FCC. And they're saying, this is the Republicans saying the Democrats are going too far. And, Chad, you talk about your blood boiling. My blood sort of is boiling because what about the independents? The independents have no seat at the table. And so this is just this great example of, using the government to try to even the playing field between the Dems and the Republicans, but totally leaving the independents out. And what do you think about that?
Well, first, I got to travel a little bit back in history. Most recently, everybody's seen Jesse Ventura kind of going really after Donald Trump on the ICE stuff, right? Well, let's venture back about 20 years into history, where maybe a little longer than that. Donald Trump and Jesse Ventura were the Reform Party. Were on there doing a press conference about how the presidential debates rigs the rules so that third parties and third voices can't be involved in the debates.
Yeah.
I mean, Donald Trump might have forgot that part of his history, right? But that's the danger right now. And frankly, I mean, a lot of these, in my opinion, quote unquote comedians have become more political pontificators than comedians, right? In my opinion. But the reaction is, okay, now the Republicans control the FCC and they're going to try to skew it so it benefits more right voices on the right.
I think this just contributes to the general decline of people, being interested in traditional media at all.
Right.
There's no apparatus to control the internet content besides the corporations themselves that control the social media.
Right. So what about Joe Rogan?
Yeah.
Does he have to invite Kamala Harris on his show every time he invites?
Exactly. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know. So it's tough, but what's the solution? I don't know. I mean, I'd like to have a more nonpartisan group in control of the FCC and have people that are appointed there that are accountable to a broader base. But it's the same thing we saw at the CPD, right? People go, oh, it's a nonpartisan. People think the CPD is like a government organization. That's the Commission on Presidential Debates. It's literally a nonprofit established by guess who? The Democratic and the Republican Party. And they say, oh, well, we each get to appoint 3 people to the panel. And so the media goes, oh, it's bipartisan. And legally, they have to be nonpartisan as a nonprofit, right? But they're not.
There's such a big difference between bipartisan and nonpartisan. Can we just say that? Bipartisan is probably better than just, better than nothing when we have the Democrats and the Republicans working together to put forward things that matter to the people, but nonpartisan would be so much better.
Right. And how
I think it all started basically when Kamala Harris went on Saturday Night Live right before the election. And, it just made Donald Trump's head explode that, she was getting all this time. And we do have, the 1934 Communications Act, which has an equal time rule. And that's what the FCC is trying to resurrect right now. And, it hasn't always been it's led to some pretty absurd results that I read about actually in the Wall Street Journal, which is against this, by the way. The Wall Street Journal editorial page is against what Brendan Carr is doing. So that's sort of interesting. But they point out how after Arnold Schwarzenegger declared his candidacy for California governor way back in 2003 on Jay Leno's Tonight Show, that Leno invited all 135 candidates to come on the show.
Right.
Each of the candidates was given 10 seconds to share what their ideas were at the same time. So they each had 10 seconds at the same time. The other thing that started happening when Arnold was a candidate was that they stopped showing his movies.
Really?
During the campaign, which is that's absurd. So anyway, the FEC, this is all very regrettable, I have to say, but it's not just about equal time.
You're talking about the Wall Street Journal being against it. I mean, that's owned by the Murdochs, right? This opens up Fox to lawsuits as well, right? Because if they don't have equal representation on their airtime, then I mean, they are classified as entertainment, so I don't know if that's the same thing. I think there's certain exemptions for
what are they going to do
the type of airtime that
well, I mean, like to Kara's point, like what are they going to do is like in what level is it? Like every podcaster has to go and invite somebody, everybody there's and it's funny because it's the right side of the aisle right now that they're in control, want the government to go and enforce into the private sector this rule, right? It's like
the government overreach is like coming from this side is whatever the word for ironic is on steroids. Like, give me a break.
Right.
Give me a break. So speaking of give me a break.
Okay, go ahead. We can move on from this.
I was just going to say, we've got this congressional stock trading ban discharge petition that's just been filed in the House of Representatives by the Dems. Here's what we know about congressional stock trading. 86% of Americans want to ban it. That's 88% of Democrats. It's 87% of Republicans. It's 81% of independents. They want for the Congress to ban to not be able to trade stocks when they are sitting members of Congress. And so this is obviously wildly popular. We call it an 80% issue, right, Chad?
Yeah, yeah.
So why hasn't it happened? Like every year, it's, you've got a prominent Democratic senator, a prominent Republican senator, prominent Democrats in the House, prominent and powerful Republicans in the House, all saying, let's do something about this, right? We've got to do something about this. So last week, in the latest bit of news, the House Dems have filed what's called a discharge petition in order to try to force a vote on the floor where people can weigh in the House. And you need 218 signatures. This is how they got the Epstein files law passed, was through a discharge petition where Democrats and Republicans, 218 people in the House, kind of band together to sign something to overrule what House Speaker Johnson, he's the one who decides what goes on the floor, except in the case of a discharge petition. So anyway, the petition's been signed by Hakeem Jeffries. The House ranking members are signing it. It needs these 218 signatures. And none of the Republicans will sign it because, lo and behold, the Republicans have their own bill. And this is what happens, Chad. They're all saying like, oh, we want to do this, but we want to do it in our way. It kind of makes me think like, what is really the motivation here? Is the motivation to get this done
Score
for the
points.
people? Or is it to just like have something to say like, I'm for this, but knowing that it's never, ever, ever going to become law? And this is just this really, let's talk about it.
Well, they both benefit, which goes back to the stuff. Why are they doing that nonpartisan primaries in Oklahoma? Is right now the incentives are aligned for them really not to get something done, right? The Republicans can say, we're trying to fix this problem, but the Democrats are getting in the way. And then what do the Democrats say? We're trying to fix this problem, but the Republicans get in the way. And they both get a campaign on it. They both get to gin up their base, and their base then, I don't blame a lot of these folks. They're like seeing that's the information they're getting all day, and they genuinely believe, well, the Republican Party won't do anything about it. It's like, no, they're communicating that, what if they were honest, they'd say, well, the Republicans have another bill, but here's where we disagree, and then have that argument. But that doesn't happen. They go in their silos, do their political talking points, right? And then, yeah, nothing happens because neither party wants the other party to get credit for passing an 86%
Right. But they
issue.
will do this thing like, Senator Ossoff will go with Mark Kelly, and then Hawley will join them. So they do have these like, it looks bipartisan, but then the rank and file or the leadership won't ever let anything actually really go through. And, you can have Bernie Sanders and AOC and Josh Hawley all in support of something and still have no movement because this gridlock keeps this very bad thing in place. And some of these members of Congress have, tripled their net worth or quadrupled their net worth. And, it causes voters to lose trust and faith in the system. And I don't think we can handle that anymore. We can't. The boat is leaking. We need to repair the boat.
Well, some folks have, we got some quick hits to get to, I think, right now, right?
Yeah, yeah.
There's some things that, there's talk about another 80-20 issue, right? Is voter ID. When you ask folks, and then it's a perfect example. Then the Republicans go and they campaign on it, and of course they go way too far. It's like, yeah, we wanted voter ID, but we didn't want that, right? And but Carl DeMaio in California has actually, led this voter ID initiative. That's not crazy. I mean, if the ACLU were to write a voter ID initiative, it'd probably be what Carl presented, right? But at the same time, carries up, they're going to go out and make it a Republican issue, and then the opposition will. So, what do you make of
Yes.
this situation?
So so it's pretty reasonable measure, right? It's basically you show your ID, and then you can vote if if it matches up. And like you said, the measure itself is not terribly controversial. But now what there seems to be doing is they're going to tie their voter ID initiative to a grassroots effort to pick up 26 legislative seats for the Republican Party.
And that's how an 80-20 issue loses, because they
That's
make it about partisanship instead about the reform that's trying to be done. They actually did a good job writing it, and then they'll blow it up because they'll make it a partisan issue.
Yep. And so, we'll see if he hits his final signature goal. I suspect that he will. I suspect that it'll get onto the ballot, and I'm for citizen democracy wherever it's happening. But then to tie it to partisan stuff, I can just tell you, like the way that I've led and won nonpartisan voter reform initiatives in always through having it be nonpartisan. For every Democrat, I make sure there's a Republican. For every Republican, I make sure there's an independent. Like it's that we have to be doing this together in order, for all of us. Not that we're trying to do something to manipulate it for one side or the other. That's bullshit. That's, excuse my French, but that is bullshit.
I didn't know bullshit was French.
Moving right along.
What is the origin of that term, anyways? Yeah.
I guess
We'll get there next. We'll get there next week. Well, we have a couple more things. I know California, rumor on the street is that the San Jose mayor Mahan is gonna jump into the race, which, it may not sound like like that big to the outside, but what's interesting is he's more in line with like the new mayor of San Francisco, which is like a totally different type of Democrat, right? That's really rejected, I think, the extremes of the Democratic Party. And if he kind of runs that direction, I think could really upset the apple cart, because even though there's a big field of Democrats, they're all kind of saying, following the same kind of messaging. So I don't know. Do you think this could lob in a curveball, Cara?
100%. I think it could. And I just have such a crush on this Daniel Lurie, who's the new mayor of San Francisco, who is, he's getting down to business in one of the most gorgeous, beautiful, wonderful cities on earth. He is getting down to the potholes and the homeless problem. And he is, and it's working. That's the thing. It's working. San Francisco is coming back. San Francisco is really like the center of the AI boom, of the technology boom that's happening. It needs to kind of clean up its act. And yeah, Daniel Lurie is a Democrat, but he is not the same kind of Democrat, I guess, that has run that city in the past as a sort of captive to some of these super fringy interest groups that, it's just too extreme. So this new guy who's getting in, this mayor, I think mayors make great candidates, just like I think governors make great candidates
they're
too.
executives. They have the experience of being an executive, having to
and the buck
actually make
stops
decisions.
here,
Correct.
right? The buck stops here with those guys. So if
Right.
Daniel Lurie wasn't succeeding, then you know who's responsible, who's accountable, and that's the kind of leadership I love what Daniel Lurie is doing. And so good luck to this new person, and I guess we'll have to update our independent voter news with all these new candidates.
Run a new poll. I mean, but there's definitely a lane. Our poll, which I think, type California governor's race in Google and I think they're the top, which we have, we got lots of people looking at that poll. Who knows? Maybe Mahan looked at that poll and said, holy crap, the top vote getter in this lane is none of the above. Maybe I can get some of that none of the above vote. I mean, the reality is nobody has definitely not secured the field. There's a whole different discussion we can have about how the parties will come after top two using this governor's race, but that's a discussion for another day. But we could have a very different election coming up.
At least it's a nonpartisan primary in California. At least it is top two. At least it's not this first past the post stuff going on there.
I can tell you a guy like Mahan would not jump in if we had closed primaries.
Of course not.
Right?
Of course not. So
not in a million years.
California. So I guess let's just real quickly talk about Maryland. I just wanted to tell everybody out there that Governor Wes Moore approved a new congressional map in Maryland that strengthens the Democratic Party's odds of picking up all 8 of the state's congressional districts. They already have 7, but they want 8. And, Republicans make up 25% of the electorate in Maryland. 23% of Maryland's voters are independent, and they're going to have 0 representation in Congress if this madness continues.
I mean, it just goes to show, right? Gerrymandering. The only thing that we have bipartisan here is diminishing the rights of voters, right?
Let's just call that's voter suppression, right? I mean,
it is. It is voters.
They literally have no representation. I mean, that's
right.
that's going to make someone angry. right?
Let's go back to the Independent Voter Project's case, where I'm confident, in 20 years, we may get this in front of the Supreme Court, where right now the ruling is just join a party, right? And if people can't connect what's going on in Maryland with that decision, you can't understand why we've gotten in such a partisan situation.
And so, which is moving right along to Tennessee, you know, the law come to get you if you don't walk right. In Tennessee, they have proposed a bill called House Bill 1159. It's being considered in the state legislature. It requires voters to register with a political party in order to vote. And there's a quote in our article in an article that Sean wrote this week about a guy called Gabe Hart, who's a plaintiff in a lawsuit, who was told by his, let's see, he says, after being targeted for voting in a primary for someone I've known since childhood, I feel strongly that this law is meant to intimidate voters and suppress the vote in Tennessee. I was told directly by my local DA that I should be concerned about being prosecuted. I was called a felon by a local elected official, and I was otherwise worried about both voting and speaking my mind because of this law. So what the heck, Tennessee?
This is it. If we have the resources, we might actually get in, file something, because this is germane to what we're talking about. And this is what I want folks to understand. I don't care if you lean left, you lean right, let's talk about the fundamental fairness of the system, right? Does your vote derive from joining a political party, or does it derive from being a citizen? So if you answer that question, that my right to vote is inherent in myself, my right to vote is not contingent on me joining that party or that party, right? The only answer you can have to Tennessee, to New Jersey that has closed primaries, is your system's unconstitutional, right? But right now, right, it takes all of us going into the courtroom and saying, what are you doing? My right is my right, not the party's right.
But also,
Exactly.
we have to change it because the dysfunction is killing the country. The two political parties and us only having these two choices every single election is dividing us. It's hurting us. We need an escape valve, right? We have to be able to have something besides this first past the post voting system. The system has to be opened up. We have to have open primaries where everybody can vote. They should be nonpartisan. And then you should have a certain number of people from that primary election where everybody's allowed to vote and everybody's allowed to run, go forward to a general election, and then you should give voters the opportunity to rank those choices in order of their preference. And I'm telling you, it will fix things. It will fix this fix that we're in.
Period.
And it'll realign the incentives. So,
Exactly.
man, we covered a lot of ground today, but we're wrapping this one up today. Thank you, Cara, for leading the conversation. Ethan, he's been killing it on social. We're going to get him to start writing, and maybe even in front of camera. You got to get that pretty face in front of the camera. His face looks almost as good as his voice sounds.
Well, but here's the
I
other
don't
thing.
I don't want to knock anyone out.
Chad and I are too old to be doing this stuff. We really need Ethan.
No, I think there's a great opportunity to have a sort of multi-generational dialogue. I think that's refreshing.
Right. I'm going to bring my son Angelo on. He's got some things to say too.
Yeah, there we go.
See where the 4-year-old vote's at. But thanks everybody for joining us again on Independent Voter. Visit us at independentvoterproject.org. Visit us at ivn.us, and then on social media, just search for Independent Voter. A lot going on there. You can see Ethan's next viral post if you go there. But we appreciate you all. We couldn't do this without our listeners and our readers. We're a modestly funded nonprofit, but we've been chugging for 15 years, and we're very proud of the successes that we've had. So come along. We're trying to get more involved and invite more of you folks to hear your voices. And then we always say, if you don't like something, you don't like an article, you have a different perspective, well, submit your own article to IVN, and if you follow our etiquette, we'll publish it. We'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
This is the Independent Voter Podcast, sponsored by the Independent Voter Project and produced by OLAS Media. Remember, you can always find the Independent Voter Podcast or the How It Really Works series at ivn.us. Follow and subscribe at olasmedia.com.
OLAS Nuance Media.